So we want to talk a little bit about some diversity and hiring tips. So what are some things you should be looking for as a diversity champion in this space, right? So you're thinking about being an inclusive manager or a member of a hiring team. So first, recognize that 80% of Americans will purchase a project because the company um, is an advocate for something that they care about. Right, so 87% of Americans will buy a product from a company that matches their social inclinations. Right, so folks really are looking for organizations to be corporate and social to have corporate and social responsibility. So they're really looking for organizations to have corporate and social responsibility. So don't duck the diversity questions. So be prepared to respond to diversity questions. So here are a couple of diversity questions that you should gear yourself to address. So first is give specific examples of how you have helped create an environment where differences are valued, encouraged, and supported. So we're going to ask potential employees these types of questions around diversity, right? So give us a specific example of how you have helped create an environment where differences are valued, encouraged, and supported. Tell us about a time when you successfully adapted to a culturally different environment. And then thirdly, let us tell us about a time when you had to adapt to a wide variety of people by accepting or understanding their perspective. And so when we think about some of the diversity questions for new potential hires, these are the a few examples that we can use to kind of set the tone for dealing with the diversity challenges, right? And you can see in those questions that we're asking not just about a particular type of diversity, right? So we're not just talking about race or gender or sexual orientation or religion, but we're looking for the larger concepts of how someone's been able to deal with cultural differences and adapting to those cultural differences with the hope that those will be transferable skills as they come into our organization. Right? So here are a few questions that managers may get from potential employees, right? So what do you have in place that supports newly hired individuals? So an answer could be across the organization, we have blank. I'm not sure what that is for your organization, but have that. So we have resource groups or mentoring, whatever that is in your organization. We also have blank that come together to support one another across the organization. And so maybe that's events, maybe that's, affinity groups or, employee resource groups, whatever that is, make sure you answer that, right? So we'll go to another question that managers may get in an interview process. So tell me about your organization. Tell me about what your organization is doing to address diversity and inclusion. And so this is where you talk about what you're doing, right? So whatever committees you have, whatever networks that you have, and if you don't know those, do your own research so that when you go into this interview, you'll be prepared to talk about those things, right? So we have an infrastructure in place that includes offices and networks where diversity is acknowledged and celebrated, right? So, but be a bit more specific than we are in these examples. Here's another good one. What's the level of commitment from your leadership for this work? So have an answer for this, right? So our top leaders sit on diversity and inclusion committees, and those help drive the direction of our work in diversity and inclusion across the organization. But be more specific around who those leaders are and what they're doing. And if they're not doing those things, this is a great opportunity for them for you to present this to them as something to think about, as potential candidates will be asking about these questions. What type of training and education um, do you provide employees around diversity and inclusion? Um, Simple answer: we have education around topics of unconscious bias and stereotype threat, cultural competence, LGBTI, and others that are rolled out across the organization in various channels, right? So be more specific in your answers, but recognize this is another set of questions that could come up as particular employees are curious about your corporate responsibility and in some cases, social justice initiatives, right? So, here are a few principles to remember. I won't go over these with you now. You can do this on your own, but I will leave you with that. And so, with that, we'll stop here, and I'll see you in the next section.